were saying that our Lord is God? Or was it the Muslims who were saying our Lord is God? And who were worshipping in the synagogue and in the monasteries and in the churches and the mosques? So you know the verse speaks about the mosque as well as the monasteries and the churches were in the name of God. So are these the pagan Arabs?
No. Nas,
or are these believers in God?
Nas, let me put it this way.
Whether they're Jew, Christian or Muslim.
Nas, let me put it this way, yeah. I'm dealing with the history case right now. I'm history, not religion. Okay, by God's grace, how are you doing, okay? I'm dealing with the case of history. And my challenge to you is, historically, the claim about Muhammad's history is untenable. That's my claim. I'm not talking about religious description of whatever you want to say and so on. I am talking about history. And my only point right now, in terms of responding to your point, if I were to, and if you were a historian in a university somewhere, or even if you were an amateur historian at home reading this, you don't know anything about Muhammad so far, you're trying to construct the history of Muhammad, and if you were to read this text, those who were unjustly evicted from their homes merely for saying our Lord is God, were it not that God repels people by means of others. If I were to read that, no one would even be led to, based on that statement, arrive at the conclusion that this is talking about a particular person called Muhammad, and it's talking about pagan, Meccan pagans, Meccan idolaters fighting with Muhammad. No one would do that in terms of reconstructing history. So in other words, this statement that you're bringing about is no evidence whatsoever to construct the historical case for Muhammad. So I'm going to come back to you.
Do you accept Muhammad is mentioned in the Quran, is spoken about in the Quran, so are his wives, so is like his family companions are mentioned by name, some of them?
I accept that there is a word called Muhammad in the Quran 4 times. The word occurs. Whether it refers to a particular person or not is debatable.
So you're starting from scratch. You're starting from someone who doesn't know anything, or someone who's ignorant of Islam. So just purely from the Quran, from reading the Quran like from cover to cover, you come across this man Muhammad, who's identified as a prophet of God in the Quran, who's also referred to as Khatamun Nabi, which is understood to be the seal of the prophet. So, and then you see God also speaking to him, sometimes commanding him, instructing him, and even like, speaking about religious persecution and his messages to come to common terms, our God and your God is one, not to associate partners with God. God he neither begets nor is begotten. So based upon that, this verse seems to be referring to those people who are monotheists.
I don't take the context that you are building, because the context you are building
from the Quran alone, without referring to Hadith or any other outside.
I'm responding to that. From the context you are suggesting is a context that you as a Muslim is presenting. You can never read a passage where the ideas that you are connecting are connected in the way you are connecting in the Quran. You can't bring together and build a meaningful, coherent.
So
if you can, please explain. That is my point. That is my entire challenge.
So what did I say that isn't in the Quran?
Okay, for example, for starters, let me ask you this, which is the same thing I asked earlier. Do you have any passage in the Quran which gives details of this prophet who is called Muhammad, who had a conflict with pagan Arabs in Mecca? All those details are important for me to build a storyline, because you're giving a storyline, and I'd like statements from the Quran to give me the storyline, not your idea of how you view history. So, is there any passage? Don't just use Quran. You use any evidence you want.
Okay, so in the Quran in chapter 9, verses 1 to 12, it speaks of God and His messenger are not immune from the treaty with those pagan Arabs who have broken the treaty. And
Can you please get the verse? I'd like to know the details here.
So chapter 9, verse 1, a declaration of immunity from God and his messenger to the polytheists with whom you had made a treaty.
Yeah.
So travel in the land for 4 months and know that you cannot escape God and that God will disgrace the disbelievers. And if you carry on to verse number 12, but if they, verse 30, the next, were you not fighter people who violated their oath and planned to exile the messenger and initiated hostility against you? Do you fear them, or it is God you should fear if you are believers? So this verse is saying that these people who had broken the oath, they plotted or planned to exile the messenger and they initiated the hostility against you.
Yeah.
So this is saying that these people, they're the ones who started the fight.
Nas,
and they plotted
Nas,
to exile
I don't know where
the messenger.
No. Nas,
based upon the context of
Nas,
this.
I'm going to repeat this. And
Okay.
I'm sure you would understand. You are you're supposed to be a very intelligent man. And I'm sure...
That's what people say, but anyway.
Well, and I'd like to say that too.
Thank you.
For me to continue to say that, you need to now stick to the details. I am talking about a person called Muhammad. Muhammad as a person who you call a prophet. Muhammad. Not any guy, Tom, Dick and Harry who was called a messenger. That could be anyone.
So
Let me finish.
Okay.
Muhammad, one person that I care about. The other entity that I care about, Meccan Arab idolaters. Mecca Arab idolaters. And that in particular, when I'm stressing on the word idolaters because I'm referring to the idolaters as how we would call idolaters. Because of course you would appreciate and understand that the Quran calls Christians also as idolaters. The Quran, that's true. Okay, maybe we'll discuss that later.
Christians will not refer to as mushriks or polytheists.
Okay, now, give me details about Muhammad,
if anything, in
Mecca, Muhammad, Mecca idolaters, where Meccan idolaters chased him away.
So, going back to the Christian point, in chapter 3...
No, we'll come to the Christian point later. No.
Okay.
Apologies, maybe I'll come to that later.
Okay, so in
Meccan,
the Quran...
Muhammad, Meccan pagan Arabs or idolatrous Arabs persecuting Muhammad, resulting in Muhammad having to do hijrah. Any evidence?
Yes, so in the Quran, Muhammad is referred to as the messenger of God. So there is a verse that says Muhammad,
that is what you are saying.
messenger of God. Do you want the reference or see?
You and I
are asking?
No. Wait a second. Any passage you show, please show any passage you want. But any passage you show should bring together this knowledge. Should bring together, Nas, any passage that you want to show or any number of passages you want to show should bring together the storyline. I am focused on the storyline. Muhammad, Meccan, pagan Arabs, persecution.
So in chapter 47...
so we have dealt with chapter 9, you couldn't provide.
No, I do believe I did provide because
you
wanted.
There was no reference to Muhammad there.
You wanted to know the identity of the messenger of God.
Exactly.
Elsewhere in the Quran, Muhammad is referred to as the messenger of God.
That's your claim.
And this is speaking.
I
can show you where he's referred to as the messenger of God.
No. You need to show me how, any time the word messenger is used, it refers to Muhammad. For you then to go on to say...
But that's not my understanding. My view is not any time whenever the messenger of God appears, it always refers to the Prophet Muhammad.
And therefore...
From the context determines whether it refers to Muhammad or whether it refers to Jesus
and so,
or to some other...
when you are reading from chapter 9,
but from chapter 9, grammatically...
You need to explain why you think that refers to Muhammad and why you think that the persecutors are pagan, Meccan Meccan Arab idolaters.
So grammatically, Surah 9, verses 1 to 13, is speaking in the present context. So the situation is that it's speaking of there and then. So it's addressing a messenger there and then, and it's referring to polytheists who existed there and then. So it's not speaking about a future messenger of God or someone who existed previously, but it's within that context of the Quran.
Let me put it this way, Mas. I'm really sorry right now, and I'd like to say I'm really sorry, but I'd like to say you are simply doing an injustice in our conversation. I am talking about building a historical storyline. You are building a religious, storyline. And by that, what I mean is a storyline based on religious beliefs, not a storyline based on historical artifacts or historical statements. I am trying to ask you, as a historical storyline,
did the Christians, based upon non-Muslim sources, refer to Muhammad as a messenger of God, so identified him as like a messenger
Meccan pagan Arabs persecution.
to the Saracens?
Meccan pagan Arabs persecution.
So we have like Christians from about two years after the death of the Prophet that traditionally believed are referring to Muhammad as being a messenger coming from the Arabs or from the Saracens.
Meccan pagan Arabs persecuting Muhammad. You haven't given any evidence so far.
So I'm satisfied with chapter 9 verses 1 to 13.
Chapter 9. I'm sure you would appreciate.
Also
I think you're ducking the challenge right now.
And also chapter 22 verse 40.
No, you are just adding more. Please read.
Yeah.
If you want to read one more passage, I'm quite happy for you to read. But so far, no connection made from what you have read between Muhammad and pagan Meccan Arabs, where pagan Meccan Arabs persecuted Muhammad. So far, no detail provided.
So like in verse 7 of... So I was trying to find the verse that says Muhammad is a messenger of God.
But while you're trying to get that, can I please mention this? So I said, so far I haven't heard a positive attestation. Is Quran your only source? You can use any source you want. So far you haven't given a positive attestation, historically dependable positive attestation.
So since you've opened it up not just to Quran only but also to any source, so if you go to the tafsir literature, so the tafsir identifies, but you said any source I can use.
Well, any reasonable source, any source for us to be able to build a historical case. Of course, today people can write any fancy story. Today, for example, in Islamic tradition, you have an entire mythological storyline. I agree. Today you have it. If you go to Wikipedia, you can read the entire storyline. I agree. And you can show Wikipedia if you wanted to. But that's not my point. My point is historical.
So Patricia Crone, she says the Quran that Muslims recite, almost all of it, if not all, is from the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So we can confidently conclude that these verses are addressing and speaking to the Prophet, like Surah 9 verses 1 to 13.
I disagree. So now what you're doing is you're just citing scholars here. What I don't want...
Western academics, someone who I would think you would respect. I mean,
I respect Patricia Crone in multiple different ways, but I don't agree with every single point she makes. What I'm looking for...
This is a major point.
But no, what I'm looking for is evidence. If Patricia Crone can't provide evidence,
so Crone says
that
we
still
know
means,
more about
that
Muhammad.
still means there is no evidence provided for the existence, for the...
And do you apply the same criteria to the Gospel?
Absolutely, but no.
To Jesus?
Absolutely, I'll come to that.
Outside of the Gospel,